Raquel, a pregnant taxi driver, gained the trust of a homeless man, and in the end she discovered something surprising. Raquel had been driving for hours when she squeezed her eyes shut, forcing herself to stay focused on the road. Drops of sweat ran down her forehead, despite the cool air from the air conditioning. The pregnancy was already starting to take a toll, but she refused to let it affect her work as a taxi driver. She drove through the city's busy streets, paying attention to traffic lights and pedestrian signals. Her car, an old model that had seen better days, was emitting a worrying engine sound. She decided she needed a break to check out what was wrong. Stopping at a gas station, Raquel turned off the engine and sighed in relief for a moment of tranquility. She opened the hood of the car and began to examine the engine, trying to identify the problem. While she was focused on investigations, a man approached her, catching her attention. "Do you need a hand there?" he asked, with a gentle smile on his face. Raquel looked up, surprised to see a homeless man offering help. The man was thin, with dirty and torn clothes, but there was something in his gaze that conveyed an undeniable sincerity. "Ah, thank you, but I think I can handle it," Raquel replied, although she couldn't help but appreciate the kind gesture. "Let me at least take a look," the man insisted, approaching the engine. Raquel shrugged, deciding that it wouldn't hurt to get a second opinion. She stepped back and allowed the man to examine the engine. To her surprise, he soon pointed to a loose hose. "Here's the problem," he said, pointing with his dirty finger. "You're going to need to tighten that connection." Raquel was impressed with her skill, and together they began working to repair the car. As they worked, they started talking, and Raquel discovered that the man's name was Gil. He had a simple, friendly manner, and she felt at ease in his presence. As the conversation flowed, Gil shared some of her own story. He had struggled with poverty his entire life and, for various reasons, ended up on the streets. However, he maintained a positive attitude and an unshakable faith that things would get better one day. Raquel was impressed by her resilience and determination. She thought about her own situation, pregnant and working hard to support herself and the baby on the way. She began to realize that despite the obvious differences between them, there was something in common. They were both struggling to survive in a difficult and unpredictable world. After some time, they managed to fix the car, and Raquel was ready to go back to work. She thanked Gil for his help and offered him some money, but he politely declined. "Don't worry about it," he said, smiling. "It was a pleasure to help. Plus, I think I gained a friend today." Raquel smiled, feeling grateful to have met Gil. She left, but their brief encounter left a mark on her mind. In the days that followed, Raquel couldn't stop thinking about Gil. She wondered how he was managing and if he had found shelter for the night. She decided to do something to repay his kindness. The last time she had time off from work, Raquel went to a local shelter and bought some hot meals and clean clothes. She knew she couldn't solve all of Gil's problems, but she hoped her small contribution could make a difference. She found Gil sitting on a park bench, watching the birds fly by. He waved when he saw her approach, and Raquel smiled in response. "Hi, Gil," she said, handing him the bags. "I brought you something." Gil looked into the bags, surprised. His eyes lit up when he saw the food and clothes. "That's incredible, Raquel," he said, genuinely touched. "Thank you very much." They spent the afternoon together, sharing stories and laughing together. Raquel felt happy to be able to do something good for someone who had come into her life in such an unexpected way. They met regularly, sharing meals and deep conversations. Raquel discovered that she had a lot in common with Gil, despite their different circumstances. They share a passion for music, literature, and stories of overcoming. Meanwhile, Raquel's pregnancy progressed, and she prepared for the arrival of her son. She was excited about the idea of becoming a mother, but she also felt a mixture of fear and anxiety. She wondered if she would be able to give her son everything he needed, if she would be able to be a good mother. Gil was a source of support and comfort during this time. He encouraged her when she doubted herself and reminded her that she was stronger than she thought. Their friendship became a beacon of hope amidst life's uncertainties. As Raquel prepared for the birth, she couldn't get Gil out of her mind. She wondered if he was safe, if he had enough food and shelter to survive. She missed their comforting presence and the deep conversations they shared. She promised that she would do everything in her power to help those who were less privileged than her, those who struggled to survive on the city streets. She promised that she would never forget Gil and everything he had taught her about compassion, kindness, and resilience. One day, while driving through the city streets, Raquel saw a familiar face in the crowd. It was Gil, standing in a corner, his eyes fixed on the ground. Raquel felt her heart sink when she saw him there, remembering the friendship they shared and all the times he had helped her in difficult times. She parked the car and ran towards Gil, hugging him tightly when she reached him. "Gil, where have you been?" she asked, her eyes full of tears. "I missed you." Gil looked at her in surprise, then smiled shyly. "I was taking a walk around," he said, shrugging. "You know how it is." Raquel held his hands, feeling a wave of emotion run through her body. "I thought about you every day," she said. "You will always be a part of my life, Gil. Never forget that." Gil looked at her, eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, Raquel," he said, his voice breaking. "You gave me hope when I needed it most. I'll never forget that." The two hugged each other for another moment, knowing that, despite the difficulties they faced, they had each other. Raquel felt warmed by the late afternoon sun as she walked alongside Gil through the city's busy streets. She smiled at him, grateful to have her back in his life. Gil, for his part, seemed more excited than ever, his radiant smile lighting up his tired face. "It's good to see you again, Gil," Raquel said as they walked side by side. "I was worried about you." Gil nodded, a gleam of gratitude in his eyes. "You're a special person too, Gil," she said. "Your spirit and kindness are contagious." Gil blushed slightly at the compliment, but her smile remained unshakable. "Hey, I was wondering," he said, changing the subject. "I made some homemade tortillas this afternoon. Would you like to try them?" Raquel was surprised by the invitation, but her stomach growled with desire at the thought of the delicious Spanish dessert. "I'd love to try your tortillas," she replied, smiling. "After all, I never turn down good food." The two headed to Gil's modest shelter, where he prepared the tortillas in his small makeshift kitchen. As he worked, Raquel watched in awe, impressed by his culinary skill. "You are truly a man of many talents, Gil," she commented as he dipped the slices of bread into the sweetened milk. Gil laughed, shaking his head modestly. "I learned to cook when I was a kid," he explained. "My grandmother used to teach me all her favorite recipes. Tortillas were one of my favorites." Raquel smiled, imagining Gil as a little boy helping his grandmother in the kitchen. She felt a rush of tenderness for him, realizing how much he had lost over the years. While the tortillas were frying, the two sat at the kitchen table, sharing stories and laughs. Gil opened up about his difficult childhood and the lessons he learned along the way. He revealed his frustration with past relationships, explaining how he always seemed to attract people who didn't value him. "I never understood why I kept getting involved with the wrong people," Gil confessed, his dark eyes filled with sadness. "I guess I just wanted to be loved, but I always ended up hurt in the end." Raquel listened intently, her heart aching for the pain Gil had endured. She thought about her own past relationships, the times she felt alone and misunderstood. She knew they had more in common than they could ever imagine. "I understand how you feel, Gil," she said softly, placing her hand over his. "I've had my own challenges in love too. But I think it's important to remember that we deserve more than relationships that hurt us." Gil looked at her, his eyes shining with gratitude. "You always have the right words, Raquel. I think that's why I like you so much." Raquel felt heat rise in her cheeks, surprised by the sincerity of Gil's words. She had always thought of him as a dear friend, but now she was beginning to realize that her feelings might run deeper than that. Before she could respond, Gil brought a plate of freshly prepared tortillas to the table, interrupting the intimate moment. Raquel grabbed a warm, crispy tortilla, savoring the sweet, comforting flavor. "It's delicious, Gil," she praised, her mouth full. "You really are a master in the kitchen." Gil smiled, visibly pleased with the compliment. "I'm glad you like it," he said, helping himself to a tortilla as well. "I've always thought food is a wonderful way to bring people together." The two continued to eat and talk, enjoying each other's company. Raquel felt a sense of peace and contentment spread throughout her body, knowing that she was exactly where she was supposed to be. As the sun began to set over the horizon, Raquel realized it was time to leave. She said goodbye to Gil with a warm hug, promising to meet again soon. As she walked back home, Raquel thought about Gil's words and the emotions he had awakened within her. The loss of her mother when she was young left a deep wound in Raquel's heart that never seemed to completely heal. Her sudden death left Raquel and her brother orphans, left in the care of distant relatives who could barely care for themselves, much less two traumatized children. It was during this turbulent period in her life that Raquel met Lucas, the manager of a local travel agency and the father of her child. Lucas was a handsome, charismatic man who seemed to offer an escape from the pain and sadness that permeated her life. He wooed Raquel with promises of love and security, and for a brief moment she allowed herself to believe that perhaps she could find happiness with her. But his happiness was short-lived. Raquel soon discovered that Lucas was not who he seemed to be. He cheated on her repeatedly, betraying her trust and leaving her pregnant and heartbroken. Raquel felt foolish for having fallen for his lies and manipulations and vowed never to trust anyone so blindly again. As she walked through the city streets, Raquel felt a mixture of sadness and anger bubbling up inside her. She wondered how she could have been so naive, so easily fooled by someone like Lucas. She wondered if she would ever be able to get over the scars he left on her heart. As memories of her consumed her, Raquel found herself arriving at her modest apartment. She walked in and plopped down on the couch, allowing herself to sink into the darkness of her tumultuous emotions. She felt lost and alone, unable to see a clear path forward. It was then that the phone rang, breaking the gloomy silence of the apartment. Raquel looked at the device, surprised to see Gil's name flashing on the screen. She hesitated for a moment, then answered, curious to know why he was calling. "Hi Gil," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "To what do I owe the honor of your connection?" Gil's voice sounded calm and comforting on the other end of the line. "I was just thinking about you, Raquel," he said softly. "Are you well?" Raquel sighed, feeling grateful for Gil's care. "I'm living," she admitted. "Just going through some tough times." Gil listened in silence as Raquel opened up about her recent struggles, her painful memories, and her worries for the future. He offered words of comfort and encouragement, reminding her of her strength and resilience. "You're stronger than you think, Raquel," he said softly. "I know you'll get through this." Raquel felt a sense of gratitude wash over her. Gil was a true friend, someone she could trust completely. She promised herself that she would do the same for him whenever she needed. After hanging up the phone, Raquel found herself thinking about her recent interactions with Gil. She remembered the kindness and support he always offered, even in the darkest of times. She asked if perhaps there could be something more between them, something beyond the friendship they shared. But she was afraid of being hurt again, afraid of breaking herself even more than she was already broken. Raquel wanted to believe in love and happiness. She wanted to believe that she could find someone who truly loved her and valued her for who she was. But at the same time, she wondered if such happiness was beyond her reach, if she was destined to live a life of loneliness and pain. Raquel was sitting in her modest living room, lost in thought, when she heard a noise outside. She quickly got up and went to the window, curious to see what was happening. What she saw horrified her. Lying on the sidewalk in front of her building was a man, bleeding and groaning in pain. Raquel didn't hesitate. She ran outside, her feet hitting the asphalt as she approached the injured man. As she got closer, she realized that the injured man was Gil, the homeless man she met a short time ago. Gil had a deep wound on his leg, bleeding profusely. Without thinking twice, Raquel knelt beside him, firmly pressing the tissue against the wound to stop the bleeding. "Are you okay?" she asked, her voice full of concern. Gil groaned in pain, his eyes twitching in agony. Raquel looked at him, determined to do what she could to help him. She knew he needed urgent medical attention, but she also knew she couldn't wait for the ambulance. She looked around, looking for a solution. It was then that she took the taxi, which Gil had helped fix, started the engine and drove quickly towards the nearest hospital. "You need to try hard to stay conscious, do you hear me?" Gil nodded weakly, his eyes fixed on hers. Raquel helped him to his feet, supporting him on her shoulder as they walked to the car. Carefully, she helped him into the passenger seat, before running to the driver's side. She started the car and sped down the street, driving as fast as she could toward the hospital. As he drove, she kept an eye on Gil next to him, watching his ragged breathing and his eyes closed tightly. "You're going to be okay," she told him, trying to keep her voice calm and collected. "We're almost there." They finally arrived at the hospital, and Raquel helped the man out of the car, supporting him on her shoulder as they walked into the emergency room. Doctors rushed to their aid, taking the injured man inside for immediate treatment. Raquel remained in the waiting room, her heart pounding in her chest as she waited for news. As she waited, her mind went back to Gil and the dire situation he was in. She asked who could have done this to him and why. She also asked what would happen to him after he was treated at the hospital. She knew she couldn't leave him alone, not after everything he had been through. Finally, a doctor approached her, bringing news about Gil. Raquel held her breath, waiting for the worst. "He's going to be fine," the doctor said, easing the weight on her chest. "The wound on his leg was serious, but we managed to stop the bleeding in time. He will need some time to recover, but he will survive." Raquel sighed in relief, a wave of gratitude flooding her heart. She thanked the doctor before leaving the hospital, her mind spinning with thoughts of Gil and what to do next. She couldn't help but think about him and how he needed someone to protect him, to take care of him. She knew she couldn't just leave him alone, not like he was so vulnerable and defenseless. "I can see him?" she asked the doctor. "Of course. He's still a little groggy from the medication, but I think he'll be happy to see you." Gil slowly woke up, feeling disoriented for a moment as he looked around the unfamiliar room. He blinked a few times, trying to remember how he had gotten there. Then the events of the night before came back to him in a flood of memories. He only remembered that he had been injured and that Raquel helped, taking him to the hospital and staying by her side while he received treatment. He asked what would happen to him now, as he was regaining consciousness and preparing to face the uncertain future. He got up from the bed, feeling weak and dizzy, but determined to find out what was going on. He found Raquel in the hospital waiting room, where she greeted him with a relieved smile. "You're awake," she said, her voice full of relief. "How are you feeling?" Gil smiled faintly, grateful for Raquel's concern. "I'm a little dizzy, but I think I'm fine," he replied, his voice hoarse. "Thank you for everything you did for me, Raquel. I don't know what I would have done without you." Raquel shook her head, her smile soft. "You don't need to thank me," she said. "I just did what anyone would do." Gil realized there was something special about Raquel, something that drew him to her in a way he couldn't fully understand. While they were talking, Raquel suggested that Gil rest a little more before trying to get up. She explained that doctors wanted to make sure he was completely stable before letting him leave the hospital. Gil agreed, allowing himself to close his eyes and let himself drift into comforting sleep. As he slept, he dreamed of an uncertain future, but with Raquel by his side, he felt a sense of hope and determination fill his heart. When Gil was finally released from the hospital, Raquel offered to take him home. He gratefully accepted, knowing that he wouldn't have been able to survive without her help. As they continued driving, Gil began asking where they were going. He had no home to return to. He had left everything behind when he fled the hospital, knowing his father would be looking for him. Gil couldn't stop thinking about what his father would do if he found him. The only thing he could do was trust Raquel and wait for her to take him to a safe place. Gil couldn't shake the thought of his father, that man whose shadow loomed like a constant threat over his life. Ever since he left home, he knew his father would be hot on his trail, determined to drag him back to a fate Gil refused to accept. Raquel, the only person he could trust at that moment, drove steadily, her eyes fixed on the dark road that stretched ahead. She knew of Gil's situation and was determined to help him escape his father's clutches. The reason Gil's father persecuted him goes back to a dark secret buried in the family's past. There was a power struggle, a bitter legacy that had divided the family years ago. And now, with Gil's father's health rapidly deteriorating, he saw one last chance to claim what he believed was rightfully his. However, Gil refused to return to that life of oppression and manipulation. And so, as Raquel and he fled into the night, he tried to understand his father's reasons for pursuing him so relentlessly. "Where are we going, Raquel?" he asked, his voice full of uncertainty. Raquel smiled, turning to him with a twinkle in her eyes. "Let's go to a safe place I know," she said. A place where we can hide and get some rest. You're safe with me. Gil looked at her, surprised by her generosity. He couldn't believe how lucky he was to have met someone like Raquel, someone willing to help him when he needed it most. "Thank you, Raquel," he murmured, his gratitude overflowing. "I don't know what I would have done without you." Raquel smiled, her expression soft. "You would have done the same for me," she said simply. "We help each other, that's how life works." Gil agreed, feeling humbled by Raquel's kindness. He didn't know what the future held for them, but he knew he was willing to face any challenge as long as Raquel was by her side. As they continued driving along the deserted roads, Gil felt a sense of freedom and adventure fill his heart. He knew they were embarking on an uncertain journey, full of dangers and obstacles, but also full of hope and possibilities. Raquel made a call to a friend who worked at a local shelter. The next day, Raquel took Gil to the shelter, where he was welcomed with open arms by the staff and other residents. He still had a long way to go, but at least now he was in a safe place, away from his father's immediate danger. In the days that followed, Raquel continued to visit Gil at the shelter, bringing him food and clean clothes. The two developed a strong friendship, sharing laughs and stories as Gil slowly recovered from his injuries. Meanwhile, Raquel was getting closer and closer to her due date. She was excited to meet her baby, but also worried about what the future held for her and the child. She knew it would be difficult to raise a child alone, but she was determined to do her best. Raquel sat in the small hospital waiting room, anxious and nervous, as she awaited the arrival of her baby. Her hands were shaking slightly. She looked at the clock on the wall, counting the minutes until it was finally time. Beside her, Gil was sitting on a chair, holding her hand tightly. He had a comforting look in his eyes, conveying silent support for his friend at such an important time. Despite all the difficulties he faces, Gil was there, by Raquel's side, as he had always been since the day they met. "Are you okay?" Gil asked softly, noticing the worried expression on Raquel's face. She nodded, forcing a smile. "I'm just a little nervous, but I'm fine. Thank you for being here with me, Gil. It means a lot to me." "I'll always be here for you, Raquel. You know that," he replied gently, squeezing her hand a little tighter in a gesture of comfort. As they waited, Raquel couldn't help but think about how her life had changed in the last few months. From the day she met Gil until now, so many things have happened. She found unexpected friendship and support at a time when she desperately needed it. Finally, after hours of anxious waiting, the long-awaited moment arrived. Raquel was taken to the delivery room, where she gave birth to a beautiful baby boy. The newborn's cries filled the room, bringing a radiant smile to Raquel's tired face. "It's a boy," the doctor announced, holding the baby in his arms and showing him to Raquel. Tears of joy filled Raquel's eyes as she reached out to pick up her son. The moment she held Mateo in her arms for the first time was indescribable, an explosion of love and happiness that flooded her heart. "Hello, Mateo," she whispered, gently stroking the baby's soft cheek. "Welcome to the world." While Raquel was enjoying the first precious moments with her son, Gil was outside the delivery room, waiting impatiently to see the two of them. When he was finally allowed in, he entered the room with a beaming smile on his face. "He's perfect," Raquel said, looking at Gil with her eyes shining with joy. "My little Mateo." Gil approached, watching the baby in awe. "He really is. Congratulations, Raquel. I'm so happy for you." The following days were filled with moments of pure happiness and love as Raquel adjusted to life with her new son. She would spend hours looking at Mateo as he slept, marveling at the little life she had brought into the world. Meanwhile, at the shelter, Gil continued his recovery journey. With the support of staff and other residents, he was making significant progress in his quest for stability and independence. He had found a temporary job at a local coffee shop and was starting to save money to rent his own apartment. Raquel regularly visited Gil at the shelter, bringing her food and clean clothes, but also sharing precious moments together. The two developed a strong and lasting friendship, supporting each other on their individual journeys. As the months passed, Raquel and Gil discovered that their lives were more intertwined than they ever imagined. They shared laughs and stories, comforting each other in difficult times and celebrating each other's successes. Meanwhile, Mateo grew up happy and healthy, bringing joy to Raquel's life with each passing day. She was determined to give her son the best possible start in life, despite the challenges she faced as a single mother. As time passed, Raquel realized that although their lives may have started in different ways, Gil and Mateo shared the same desire to find happiness and peace. Together, they formed a soul family, united by love and friendship.